So, if you think things through, that would have to be a fairly accurate summary, wouldn't it? So, we're in normal land, so we're in Britain as of 2019. Then the government says, okay, you're going to be locked in your home now. Well, okay, good. I'm away from morons and not in a totally unsuitable building where we can't actually do the job because the organisation's been taken over by incompetent crooks who've got around to smashing the place up, and I've just been sort of caught along with the wave. But the wave has sort of washed me into what is now effectively the military academy of Clanmagrath. So if you've gone to study politics, you've suddenly realised that you don't need to pay to actually read Clausewitz. So at that kind of time, you've sort of realised that when you're queuing around a Tesco car park with a shopping trolley, it's entirely possible that someone may appear out of thin air, beside you fairly large, and possibly you may want to be conscripted to the British Army, not necessarily the right choice. Now, fortunately that didn't happen via massive amounts of coercive control by the state, via other psychological warfare means. But of course Mitchie was with them, wasn't she? And of course, if anyone had been thinking, she was either a security risk or she was there as part of the kabuki, or who even knows what that was. But she should have clearly never been in that post. But sort of 6 years on, you've got the normal people saying, hang on, nothing's actually changed. A lot of these people are serious, really dangerous criminals and should be in jail. Now, among the people saying this are people with actual legitimacy, such as Birmingham's court staff. So, under normal circumstances, if one of your court officers is pointing, going, excuse me, that person appears to be a crook, sir, can you apprehend them? They may be taken seriously, but because this person is we're talking about white-collar crime, that isn't happening. But when the white-collar crime has an Islamist behind it, it really isn't happening. And of course, that's the current position in Birmingham. So in summary then, we all get locked in our house. Oh, what's happening? Oh, right, okay, so we get the Enigma code from Helen. So I look at that thing on my pillow like it's possessed, like it's going to bite me. Then I actually read the damn thing and actually absorb it into the Jungian psychology. And from there on, of course, the intelligent brain can go around their databases looking at stuff, challenging these idiot directors, causing quote-unquote trouble. But of course, it's laying evidence, isn't it, into their servers that you knew at the time something was seriously wrong, and were saying and doing something about it, and haven't stopped for the entire 6 years. So at this particular point, this woman is playing stupid games with the computer at this particular moment. Nobody cares, right? Nobody in their right mind would be in the least bit interested. She has no credibility whatsoever, because what we were telling her several years ago is clearly coming to be in some kind of miraculous prophecy. It's not that I'm Nostradamus or something, I'm just not a complete idiot. I can look at an idea and a strategy meant to attack people like the British, realise it's being pumped through corporate communications, and realise that's dangerous in that kind of city, and put things to the managing director 6 years later, and again be proven correct straight away. When that kind of stuff happens, it's quite clear that someone like her has to be accountable for that happening, because that's what she's paid to do. Overseas security would be her responsibility. The strategy of government, of course, is diffusal of responsibility. So she's never responsible for anything, but she's responsibility for her own words. And if her own court officer can be made to be responsible for vanishing to nothing with a pat on the head, then that's fine, isn't it? In the postmodernist bureaucratic state, but it doesn't really work, does it? Which is why she's hiding. There are various ways to trigger the bombing, quote unquote, which is obviously the Irish obviously tearing her career apart. One of the great ones is my late father's former associate, Errol Robinson, lived around the corner from me for much of my life, never gave me any kind of legal advice. I was offered a cup of tea by him after my dad's funeral or during, but I've made it clear to one of my former colleagues, who will momentarily remain nameless, that they can give it to another one of my former colleagues, who's clearly constructively dismissed by the imbecilic criminal, Tracy Halsey, who's employing her useless lazy son cough, possibly with some self-awareness, into the department. So it's not about him personally, it's about the general corruption. You can't actually do that in a public body. It destroys the department effectively. You can't actually trust anyone. Nobody trusts Halsey who's willing to work for. But the department is effectively smashed up, so if you want to go in there for any kind of professional career, you'll be treated in effectively a disgraceful manner, regardless of capability, because of the way the organisation is run as this sort of parasitic carbuncle that they have no idea people's skills. There's no sort of skills audit effectively, so you'll be underappreciated, underpaid, working for an organisation in as many cases just attacking people's children, also kind of criminal activity going on, that kind of stuff. But the current position is it's just dangerous to the behaviour of the managing director, so we're waiting for her to be interviewed under caution by West Midlands Police. She failed to respond to a letter for action from her own court service regarding historic and child welfare matters. You don't fail to respond to stuff like that in that kind of position. So sensibly I'm out of the city until sensibly the matters are resolved by the adults, but there aren't any left in Birmingham, that they're all gone. Lots of the compliance people left many years ago, just left for sort of thugs and criminals with the electronic money coming in. Post-COVID, of course, there's a load to be cleared out. I'm sure many organisations have a lot of trash to be cleared, but just in Birmingham they're so sort of dug in. You've got to create sort of a bunker buster effectively to get them out. So we've developed this in Edinburgh over the course of November till now. Getting to physical safety first off. So from getting out of home with clothes on back, a piece of shrapnel, and a painting, to having an office, getting involved with the embryonic low party, getting some good conversations with some of their guys, and actually getting into Neville Holt, the place where the Defence Secretary and the spooks go, and that kind of thing. And we've now been to Central London, the training. The advice was be sensible. Well, okay, we are. We've been doing again a lot of work in Birmingham for 6 years. Prior to this, we've got plenty of background in this kind of stuff. If they want teams to have a look at this, we're well prepared. Just a case of them picking this up properly and negotiating the laptop to be turned on when the criminals in the department are arrested. Again, don't need new law. It's already under existing law. Which need Lowe's team to wake up and obviously get police in, because they're getting the same please call police messages every day. We're getting emails sent out. Try and sit down to think amid the chaos. There's various other stuff going on. I'm not just setting fire to Birmingham every day. But the important thing is getting through to Birmingham, because a lot of my colleagues are being dumped off in a similar fashion. There's all sorts of vulnerable people who are left more vulnerable because of the breakdown in order and the deliberate causing of chaos by Chris Naylor and John Cotton to just getting power and money, I think it was. They view this as a sort of a dumping ground as their career, so it was to train the kabukiists to go off into the world and be kabukiists, I think is the idea. But Naylor was just such a dangerous chancer. The damage he's done is just difficult to quantify, and he's now one of these people who's not going to need to be found. But again, for the recording, we just can't get any kind of police or legal representation from November till now. And again, you're talking about someone with a serious legal background. The family, father's side was in criminal defence, mother was in sort of conveyancing and this kind of thing. So if you're from that kind of background and the state can behave like this, again, you make the correct legal inference that because of X, Y, Z, you've got to obviously, for sensible purposes, go and find representation. Again, there's one, it's not actually difficult to find, and we tolerate potentially representation from people who are hypothetically hostile. So you can take a Crenshawist as a lawyer because you can think your way around them effectively if you know the kabuki strategy. This is not hard, but it's just there is no physical will to not let their employees of close to 2 decades be stabbed to death for their own personal benefit. Right, that's the only legal inference. So it's again the lack of being able to make inferences was because of the threat of physical violence. Effectively, this is what this is degenerated into. So for the witness statement, you would think about interviewing people from the prior life, effectively, and the level of functioning, because again, it's not like there's a genetic mismatch. It's just because of the case history, you were prevented from thinking effectively for your entire career, more or less until November, I would say, until last year or possibly October. But as soon as the old man died, and you haven't got someone like that attacking you, imagine what it must be like to have the sort of guy who puts criminals into dungeons or saves them, attacking you as his child for your entire life, and you think, oh right, when he's sort of lying, dying and saying, well, you're not me, he's right, isn't he? Because he wouldn't have been able to cope with that. That you've been able to, without basically any resources, just get into the position where you've basically got your guts, your fingers in Birmingham's guts via their servers, because of your capacity, essentially for philosophy. So because this was deemed a sort of a non-money-making subject in the Blairite era, of course nobody went to study it for money, but of course you went to study it because you were interested in knowledge, and of course in terms of legal proceedings, it's certainly going to give you an edge because you're more alert. But in terms of legal proceedings, you're just going to be able to do it in the first place. So there's no real reason for me to sit around, obviously, and wait for these morons in Birmingham to read political theory. We need to start arresting crooks now, because they've had several years of evidence chains and requests for assistance. Now it is just about catching crooks. So there is no way the laptop is going back to anyone in that city while they're playing fake bureaucrat games. The only person it would logically have to go to at this point is the commissioners, because it's already been to, logically, Max Corler, and he's left. So Debs ain't getting shit. But the lull over Monday was remembering that from November until now there have been women along the way who haven't been complete morons and who actually live in the real world and in reality. So when you're describing the security to them and they're looking to you like the situation is deranged, it is, because in the rest of the world nobody would ever behave like this. Should never get anywhere near behaving like this. But because of the patronage networks, you've got effectively people who are killers running these departments, totally unsafe. If you're renting, if you are vulnerable, you're going to need serious legal protection from some of these bureaucrats. Shark-like predators will say, you kick people in the face, let them kill themselves or die in various unpleasant ways, so they're not inconvenienced and keep getting state money. And when you're in that kind of department, of course you're good for the job, because organisations like that will attract psychopaths as a natural result. But if you're running the hard compliance, you can hold cases back. So you can say, I'm sorry, your case is bad, in polite enough language so that it can be passed back, and they sort of hiss a bit and sort of attack your career in various other ways. But you can do the goalie stuff quite well. It's just the psychological load of, and obviously the reality in terms of potential capacity for being violently assaulted is just unacceptably high in the city. So you have to physically come out here to do the job. But of course then you've got the ethics of sending colleagues out when you know that the security is not acceptable, because we can't discuss security like adults, because intersectionality deliberately infantilises people. That's the point. Again, the idea is a woman, specifically Crenshaw, with a pair of scissors, coming back to you and giggling, because the name for the ideology, of course, is very, very funny for various reasons, but that's one of them. When you're in a compliance department, you can't actually run it on that basis for obvious reasons, because you need to obviously engage in potentially violence with large adult men. So being cognitive liberty comes in connection with physical liberty, which involves self-defence. So you can't have this adult conversation with Gentieri, which is a corrupt moron. again, in terms of Birmingham, the test is basically the children's book. So Southport happens. What does the EDI retard do? Well, he posts this genocidally racist literature by the race communist. I can't even remember her name. Brilliant black British history or something, but it's got this section where the Vikings are killing each other. So obviously my people, the Celts, are murdering the Vikings, my mate, and stabbing each other to death. And in the foreground is this sort of contemporaneous African woman with her child. And you look at that and think, haha, isn't that silly? Because the idea is it's deliberately sinister. And if you actually read the pseudo-academic literature, it's deliberate insertion into the historical literature, fake, it's obviously fake, but it's obviously trying to sever the roots of the Celts, and obviously she's in the foreground, so we can sort of kill each other off. They can inherit it once we're dead, is the idea, or they can finish it off along the way, or whatever the Crenshawrists would, of course, do if they ever gained power over the British, which of course they're not going to do, because they've been caught, and their strategy doesn't work. But of course, the question for the Crenshawrists was also, are they in turn being used? So Marcuse obviously used the entire coalition, didn't he? So they were just useful idiots. But obviously the human ape biology stuff is at the base roots, so that's the easiest way to trigger violence in the human ape. Just threaten them in which they get angry, then you can manipulate them that way. They're very easy, not hard. But with the computer technology, this stuff is not hard to explain, and with British security, actual British security, this stuff in terms of organisational compliance is going to be really easy, isn't it? Removing intersectional activists is the easiest thing in the world. You talk to them and remove them if they don't belong there. It's so easy, even I can do it. So again, for the recording, the other one is, of course, directors have criminal responsibility, so still no response from Tim Savile, who went along with quote-unquote equity, which obviously it makes you corrupt, so you've lied effectively. If you're not clever or honest enough or to say, I'm sorry, what do you mean, then you're basically going on with a cult effectively, so your career is going to take a bit of a battering from that, to say the least. And then you've got Darren Canning, of course, who promoted the worship of the sex offender, I forget what they did. They were child rapist or something, and they were housed in a woman's prison. I don't even know. But of course, there are all these awful incidents of people who went along with the cult, causing women to be seriously harmed. The position in Birmingham was, in 2020, of course, you chose one angle of attack. So there was a social worker who'd do that part of the cult, and I would do the quote-unquote race stuff, because logically I was the only one who could do that, just based on family background and spine and safety and all that kind of stuff. So we were challenging people internally from 2020 until now. But of course, after Southport, it all became impossible. So when you've got the sort of people gaining access to the communications architecture that should be nowhere near it, you've got ongoing safety concerns. You can't, you think about it for 30 seconds and go, oh right, that shouldn't happen, it never happened, and will never happen again. So until that's resolved sensibly, so an adult saying, oh right, yes, these people have been removed, I'm sorry sir, terribly sorry, I'm well glad for catching these crooks, etc, etc, we're out. Someone else can arrange security. If they're not going to arrange security for me, it's down to other people. They don't give a shit about my family, by the way. No interest in looking after my remaining family. They're happy to sort of leave us to drop dead. So we owe these people nothing at this point. We're happy to. We'll certainly take a legal action against them for personal damages if we can get again sensible legal representation. Because the barrier is putting stuff through the process, but also someone intelligent enough to have an adult conversation about the clinical history, which is going to be quite complicated, the witness statement. So you'd need that logically, but you'd need to find both a solicitor and a doctor who are both intelligent enough and adult enough to have the relevant conversation. So good luck finding that. But again, this is not my problem, so it's Canning's problem. He's got criminal liability. He's been told he's got to play the weigh the brain game in employment law, so he's got to find someone who can weigh my brain effectively in terms of functioning, and the onus is on him. So again, play the game, play this game however you want, but someone in Birmingham has to take some kind of responsibility, don't they, for someone who's been working there for 17 years. And we get to see who's going to actually try that, not the sort of fake bureaucrat this little moron is trying to create in some kind of strange attempt to save her career. And as soon as she hit send, I'm sure she thought, oh right, it's all over. But of course the fake bureaucrat Scarecrow has had its throat torn out by the guy with shrapnel, who just doesn't give a shit, and is going to start smacking their little bottoms from space, even before the lawyers turn up. So all this, by the way, is before representation. So again, lots of legal background, but you still need someone who's used to the process to smooth you through it. But if Birmingham is going to, try and hive you off from representation, that's clearly seriously unethical, isn't it? And of course, past a point, it became clearly illegal. You can't obviously report things under the serious misconduct policy if you can't get legal representation. No reasonable person could expect that to be the case. So how does the Office of the Citizen's Letter expect anyone in the organisation to reasonably ever do that when Joanna Campbell remains in charge of the inlet? It should be noted as well in the getting actually. I mean, the reason, by the way, the doctor says do X, Y, Z is because the doctor is probably actually better educated in most cases than you are, and certainly than I am. So the thing about doctors is you kind of defer to their expertise. So she says do it, and I do it, but because she knows I'm an adult and we're going to continue down the intelligent adult pathway in terms of do it, we can now be assertive in terms of the employer in terms of do it. So when I'm saying to employer after 17 years do it in terms of my own health matters, which is not that my personal health is not the responsibility of my current line manager, that my current line manager is mentally incapable because she's an old woman, is not educated enough to actually understand what I'm saying, but the position is the woman above her is just a crook. We've been saying she's a crook since November, because there are so many crooks in Birmingham, they can't arrest all the violent crooks. The bureaucratic crooks are getting a pass, but the thing about the bureaucratic crooks is they're really easy to pick up. They want big burly police officer. So you go in with a big tank, you pick up a gentieri with handcuffs, take her off to the police station, the interview and the caution about quote-unquote anti-racism. So we don't care what her answer is yet, just there's a tape with her reading cynical theories and answering as how it affects the court service, and various other matters, whatever this woman wants to say, and she can no comment away through it, all she likes, we'll take it regardless. Every day the police fail to be called is again further criminal liability. We've called the police on multiple occasions in Edinburgh. There's police recordings. Clears police in Edinburgh, police standards, we need to discuss things with police representation and medication, again effective brain functioning. Can't be administrative without it, can't be physically and therefore mentally healthy without it, and physical safety without a Birmingham. So it's going to affect your witness statement, your ability to be honest, isn't it? Morons. I don't know, we'll just carry on. So you don't really need to be between the Mott and the Bailey to tear the face off people in Birmingham. You sort of hang around the city and being around from the misery and gloom that the place infects on your soul is sort of lifted by not being there. But now we're not there, and our feet are sort of firmly planted in a place they're fairly likely to remove me from. we can, having made it out in the Shroud, start tearing the throat out of the managing director, because we didn't start, we've been doing it since last year, as we've made clear. But this woman can be found because she can explain her behaviour to her own core staff. We cannot run, I'm afraid, a quote-unquote anti-racist court service or housing stock, because that would be completely illegal, stupid and dangerous. We'll have a proper explanation as to what this woman is saying and doing. Thank you. So there can be an initial written essay as to what she's saying and doing, and then she can come and explain to me. So having given the Herald training back in 2020, she can now take my course and explain herself to me. She can explain by Monday, regardless, midday Monday again, but in the interim, once again, police will be called, so we can discuss departmental matters, physical security, safety, and obviously the various arrests for non-compliance in Birmingham's court service. I suppose the at the end of sentences is a bad habit. I think it's probably the foreign response and the CPTSD stuff. So Pete Walker, of course, says that obviously because humans are monkeys, if you've gone through Harlow's, of course, this 1% of the population logically has, then that sort of state you get stuck in. So I think is the please don't punch me in the face comment. But of course, at this point we've got a sword and can catch bureaucrats from space. So the ums at the end of sentences are redundant, and it's just I'll cut your head off and take your essence for my soul because I'm correct. I never went along with equity or any of this nonsense, so you defer to me now. Sorry, I'm clever and not corrupt. You're bent. Shut your mouth. Do as you're told. Fetch me my ganja.